In the heart of Chicago, the sun cast a pale light through the large windows of St. Michael's Hospital, illuminating the pristine white walls and sterile environment of the bustling medical facility. Within these walls, Nurse Maya Johnson moved with a quiet grace, her presence a soothing balm for the patients who found themselves in the throes of anxiety and fear. Today, she was assigned to Mr. Leonard Smith, a middle-aged man who had been admitted for a routine surgical procedure. As Maya entered his room, she noticed the way his hands fidgeted with the crisp hospital gown, betraying his nerves. "Good morning, Mr. Smith," Maya said, her voice warm and reassuring. "How are you feeling today?" Leonard looked up, his expression a mix of apprehension and gratitude. "Honestly, I'm a little nervous," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya approached his bedside, her demeanor calm and attentive. "That's completely understandable. It's normal to feel a bit anxious before surgery. Can I get you anything? Water? A warm blanket?" Leonard managed a small smile. "A warm blanket would be great. Thank you." As she draped the blanket over his shoulders, Maya's eyes caught the details of his face, the slight creases around his eyes, the way his brow furrowed with worry. She could see that he was a man used to being in control, and now he was vulnerable, relying on others for his well-being. "Just remember, you're in good hands," she said softly. "The doctors here are the best, and they'll take great care of you." "Thank you, Maya," he replied, visibly relaxing under her care. "I appreciate your kindness. It makes a big difference." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with pride. It was moments like these that reminded her why she had chosen nursing as her profession. She took her time, ensuring Leonard felt comfortable and informed about the procedure ahead. She explained the steps they would take and reassured him that the surgical team would be there every step of the way. Just then, the door swung open with a force that disrupted the tranquil atmosphere of the room. Dr. Andrew Thompson strode in, his white coat billowing behind him like a cape. He was a well-respected surgeon, known for his exceptional skills, but also notorious for his arrogance. As he entered, the air shifted, and Maya felt a familiar, knot form in her stomach. "Good morning, Mr. Smith," Dr. Thompson said, his tone clipped and authoritative. He barely acknowledged Maya as he flipped through the charts at the foot of the bed, his focus solely on the patient. "I see you're ready for your procedure." Maya felt a pang of irritation at his dismissive attitude. She had just spent several minutes reassuring Leonard, and here was Dr. Thompson, treating her as if she were invisible. "Doctor, I was just explaining the procedure to Mr. Smith," Maya interjected, trying to assert her presence. Dr. Thompson looked up, a bemused expression crossing his face. "That's nice, but I think I can handle this, Maya." "You can step aside," he replied, his voice dripping with condescension. Leonard's eyes darted between the two, sensing the tension in the room. "Actually, I think I'd like to hear what Maya has to say," he asserted, his voice steadier than before. Dr. Thompson's gaze hardened, and he leaned slightly closer to Leonard. "With all due respect, Mr. Smith, I'm the one performing the surgery. Your nurse is here to assist, not to lead the conversation." Maya felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment as Dr. Thompson's words hung in the air like a heavy fog. She hated this feeling of being belittled, especially in front of a patient. "Dr. Thompson, I was just trying to ensure Mr. Smith feels prepared and comfortable," Maya said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "Comfort is overrated in a hospital," he scoffed, tossing aside the patient chart as if it were a mere inconvenience. "What matters is the procedure and the outcome. You should know that by now." Leonard, sensing Maya's discomfort, attempted to interject. "I appreciate the diligence of both of you, but I think it's important that we all communicate openly. I want to understand everything that's happening." Dr. Thompson's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Maya thought he might relent. But instead, he turned to her with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Maya, just let me do my job. I assure you, I'll take it from here." Maya's heart sank as she stepped back, feeling the weight of humiliation settle over her. She could see the confusion in Leonard's eyes, and she hated that he had to witness this display of arrogance from Dr. Thompson. With a forced smile, she nodded and stepped aside, her hands clenched at her sides. As Dr. Thompson began to explain the surgical procedure to Leonard, Maya's mind raced. She wanted to speak up, to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat. It was a familiar feeling, this sense of being underestimated and dismissed, a feeling that she had experienced all too often in her career. "Now, Mr. Smith," Dr. Thompson continued, his voice booming with authority, "you don't need to worry about anything. Just lie back and let the professionals handle it." Maya couldn't help but notice the way Leonard shifted in his bed, his eyes darting between the two medical professionals. She wished she could convey to him that she was just as capable, that her years of training and experience were not to be underestimated. "Doctor," she finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper, "I believe that Mr. Smith should be aware of all aspects of his care. It's crucial for his peace of mind." Dr. Thompson shot her a sharp look, his irritation palpable. "Maya, I don't need your input right now. Focus on preparing the instruments for the surgery." Maya's heart raced as she nodded, the sting of his words piercing through her. She turned on her heel and walked out of the room, her hands trembling as she grasped the door handle. Once outside, Maya leaned against the cool wall of the corridor, trying to steady her breath. She felt shaken, the humiliation washing over her like a tidal wave. How could someone so accomplished treat her as if she were insignificant? It was a question she had asked herself many times, and yet the answer always eluded her. As she collected herself, she noticed the bustling activity of the hospital around her. Nurses hurried past, pushing carts filled with supplies, doctors engaged in animated discussions, and patients being wheeled to and from various departments. It was a reminder of the vibrant life that pulsed through the hospital, despite the bitter encounter she had just experienced. Maya took a deep breath and returned to her duties, determined not to let Dr. Thompson's arrogance define her worth. She went about her tasks, checking on other patients, administering medications, and ensuring that everything was running smoothly. But she couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy that lingered after her confrontation with Dr. Thompson. Later that day, as the afternoon sun began to dip below the horizon, Maya found herself in the break room, pouring a cup of coffee. She stared out the window, watching the city skyline against the backdrop of a fiery sunset. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of laughter as her friend and fellow nurse, Tara, entered the room. "Maya, there you are! I was looking for you," Tara exclaimed, her face lighting up with excitement. "Did you hear about the new patient in room 402? You won't believe who it is." Maya turned, forcing a smile. "No, I haven't. Who is it?" "It's Leonard Smith, the CEO of that healthcare organization," Tara said, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "I can't believe you're taking care of him." Maya's heart skipped a beat. Leonard was a prominent figure in the healthcare community, known for his progressive views and dedication to improving patient care. "Yeah, I met him earlier. He seems like a great guy," she replied, her voice lacking the usual excitement. Tara tilted her head, sensing Maya's unease. "What's wrong? You don't sound too thrilled." Maya sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's just Dr. Thompson. He was so condescending to me in front of Leonard. I feel like I embarrassed myself." Tara frowned, crossing her arms. "Maya, you're an incredible nurse. Don't let his arrogance get to you. You know what you're doing, and you care about your patients. That's what matters." "I know, but it's hard not to feel small when someone like him treats you that way," Maya confessed, her gaze drifting back to the window. "Don't let him win," Tara urged. "You have a lot to offer, and Leonard will see that too. Just wait until you get the chance to show him your skills." Maya forced a smile, grateful for Tara's support. But deep down, she still felt the sting of humiliation. She knew she had to be strong, to rise above the condescension and prove her worth, not just to Dr. Thompson, but to herself as well. Later that evening, as her shift came to an end, Maya gathered her belongings and took one last look at the bustling hospital. She felt a mix of determination and uncertainty swirling within her. She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the encounter with Dr. Thompson was just the beginning of a larger battle. As she stepped out into the Maya Johnson slumped in the break room, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead. The sterile scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the hospital's clinical environment. She sat at a small table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, its warmth a fleeting comfort against the chill of the morning's earlier humiliation. Across from her sat Tara, her friend and confidant, who leaned forward, concern etched across her face. "Maya, you can't let him get to you like this," Tara said, her voice gentle yet firm. "You know how he is? He thrives on making others feel small." Maya sighed, her eyes downcast as she traced the rim of her cup with her finger. "It's not just his arrogance, Tara. It's the way he dismissed me in front of Mr. Smith. I felt like I was invisible." She looked up, her dark eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've worked so hard to earn my place here. Every day I give my all for my patients, and then he just undermines everything I've built." Tara shook her head, her long braids swaying slightly. "You have to remember that you're amazing at what you do. You have the compassion that he lacks. People see that, even if he doesn't." She reached across the table, placing her hand over Maya's. "You're not alone in this. We're all here for you, and you've got to stand tall." Maya took a deep breath, the weight of her friend's words settling heavily within her. "I know, but it's hard. Every time I think I've moved past his comments, something reminds me of how he made me feel. It's like a shadow that won't go away." "Then let's make sure he knows you won't be pushed around," Tara said fiercely. "You deserve respect, and it's about time you demand it. Let's talk to the head nurse, maybe even escalate it to HR." "I don't know, Tara. What if it only makes things worse?" Maya's voice trembled with uncertainty. "What if they side with him?" Tara squeezed her hand, her expression softening. "Then we fight harder. You're not just fighting for yourself, Maya. You're fighting for every nurse who has ever felt belittled or overlooked. You have to take a stand." Maya stared thoughtfully into her coffee, the steam swirling like her thoughts. Tara was right, of course. She had always been her anchor. But the fear of confrontation loomed large in her mind, a daunting wall that seemed insurmountable. "I just want to do my job and care for my patients," Maya whispered, the inner conflict tearing at her. Tara leaned back, her brow furrowing. "It's not just about you, though. You have a voice, and you have to use it. You're better than what he says, and deep down, you know that." Before Maya could respond, the break room door swung open, and in walked Dr. Andrew Thompson, a self-assured smile plastered across his face. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Tara's expression hardened, and Maya's heart sank. She instinctively straightened in her chair, trying to appear composed. "Ah, there you two are," Dr. Thompson said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I hope you're not discussing hospital policies over a coffee break. I'd hate to think my staff is wasting precious time." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, as if he owned the space. Maya felt her pulse quicken, the anger rising within her like a tide, but she forced herself to remain silent. Tara, however, was not as restrained. "We were just talking about how to improve patient care, Dr. Thompson. I didn't realize that was a waste of time." His eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. "Improvement starts with understanding the basics of patient care, Tara, something some of us seem to forget." He turned his gaze to Maya, who felt as though he were peeling back her defenses layer by layer. "You should take notes, Maya. After all, you're in the learning phase." Maya clenched her fists under the table, her nails digging into her palms. "Dr. Thompson, I assure you that I am well aware of the basics, as well as the advanced practices. I don't need a lesson from you." "Is that so?" he replied, feigning surprise. "Then perhaps I should just let you handle things on your own, as you clearly don't require any guidance." He smirked, the arrogance radiating off him like a heat wave. "Good luck with that." Maya's heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of humiliation and indignation surging through her. She could feel Tara's eyes boring into her, silently urging her to respond, to reclaim her dignity. But the words seemed to stick in her throat, trapped by the weight of doubt. "Let's just hope you don't make any critical mistakes," Dr. Thompson added, his voice low and taunting. "We wouldn't want to see any more unnecessary complications, would we?" With that, he turned on his heel and strode out, the door swinging shut behind him. Silence enveloped the break room, punctuated only by the sound of Maya's heavy breathing. "Breathe, Maya. Tara said softly, breaking the tension. "You're stronger than you think. You can't let him get to you." Maya nodded, though she felt anything but strong. "I know I should stand up for myself, but it's hard when he makes me feel so small." She took a long sip of her coffee, trying to ground herself. "I need to find a way to push past this. I can't keep letting him control my emotions." Meanwhile, in the hospital room directly adjacent, Leonard Smith lay in his bed, a steady rhythm of beeping machines creating an almost comforting backdrop to his thoughts. He had been observing the interaction between Dr. Thompson and Nurse Johnson from the confines of his sterile space, his brow furrowing in concern. The doctor's arrogance was palpable, and Leonard felt a knot of frustration tighten within him as he recalled the way Thompson had belittled Maya. "That's not how you treat people," he muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. He had witnessed Maya's dedication, the way she spoke to her patients with genuine care. She had a warmth that Thompson lacked, and it was infuriating to see someone so dedicated being treated with such disdain. He thought back to his own experiences in leadership roles. Respect and kindness were pillars of any successful organization. How could someone in such a position of authority so blatantly disregard those values? It was not just wrong, it was damaging not only to individuals like Maya, but to the entire hospital environment. Leonard shifted slightly in his bed, the sheets rustling around him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to do something, anything, to support Maya and the other staff members who were likely suffering under Thompson's reign. He had the power to effect change, and it was time he utilized it. As he reflected on the dynamics he had observed, he couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility. If he could lend his voice to those who felt silenced, perhaps he could help cultivate a workplace culture rooted in respect and collaboration. He knew he had to speak up, to advocate for what was right. With determination blooming within him, Leonard made a decision. He would reach out to the hospital administration to discuss the toxic atmosphere that Thompson had created. He would not let Maya's hard work go unnoticed, nor would he allow Thompson's behavior to go unchecked. He would make sure that the staff felt valued and appreciated, that their voices were heard. As he lay there, the beeping of the machines became a steady reminder of the urgency of his mission. He could not remain a passive observer. He had to act. With that resolve, he closed his eyes, envisioning a hospital where respect permeated every interaction, where nurses like Maya thrived rather than merely survived. Back in the break room, Maya took a deep breath, the tension slowly dissipating as she focused on Tara's encouraging words. "Maybe I can talk to the head nurse," she said, more to herself than to Tara. "I can't keep letting him dictate my worth." "That's the spirit," Tara beamed. "You're not just a nurse. You're a vital part of this team, and you deserve to be treated like one. Let's make a plan." Maya nodded, her heart swelling with newfound determination. It was time to reclaim her narrative, to rise above the negativity and stand firm in her worth. She would no longer allow Dr. Thompson's arrogance to overshadow her passion for her work. As the two friends began to strategize, a sense of empowerment enveloped Maya. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to confront the challenges that lay ahead. The fight for respect was just beginning, and she was more than prepared to take a stand. Maya Johnson stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow on her reflection. She smoothed down the crisp fabric of her scrubs, a deep navy blue that contrasted sharply with her complexion. Today, she had decided she would not be defined by Dr. Andrew Thompson's words. Even though the sting of his humiliation still lingered in her heart, she felt a flicker of determination rising within her. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, reminding herself of the countless patients she had comforted, the young girls she mentored at the local youth center, and the many times she had triumphed over adversity. That's where she was headed now, to the center where she volunteered, a place that had become her sanctuary amidst the chaos of the hospital. The youth center, nestled in a vibrant neighborhood filled with murals and laughter, was a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the hospital. As she entered, the familiar sounds of children's voices greeted her, and her heart swelled with warmth. She walked through the brightly colored hallway adorned with artwork created by the girls she mentored. Each piece told a story of hope and resilience, and Maya felt a connection to them. "Ms. Maya," a chorus of voices called out as she stepped into the main room. A group of young girls, aged between 8 and 12, rushed towards her, their faces lighting up with joy. "Hey ladies," Maya replied, kneeling down to meet them at eye level. "Are you ready for another exciting day?" "Yes," they shouted in unison, their energy infectious. Maya felt her spirits lift as she engaged with them, sharing stories and laughter. She remembered her own childhood and the mentors who had guided her, and she hoped to be that guiding light for these girls. Today's session was about self-esteem and empowerment, a topic she felt passionately about, especially after her recent experience with Dr. Thompson. Today, we're going to talk about believing in ourselves, no matter what others say, Maya announced, her voice steady. "Sometimes people may try to bring us down, but we have to remember our worth." One of the girls, a bright-eyed girl named Jasmine, raised her hand eagerly. "Like when you told us about that mean doctor who was rude to you, right?" Maya nodded, grateful that Jasmine had picked up on the lesson woven into her story. "Exactly. It's important to stand tall and not let anyone make us feel less than we are. We are all strong and capable." As the session progressed, Maya shared her own experiences, carefully illustrating how to rise above negativity and embrace one's strengths. She encouraged the girls to express their feelings through art, a method that had always helped her process her own emotions. The room filled with laughter and creativity as the girls began to paint and draw, their imaginations running wild. Across town, Leonard Smith lay in his hospital bed, recovering from surgery. His body ached, but his spirits were high as he reflected on the past few days. He had witnessed the dynamics of the hospital staff, especially the interactions between Dr. Thompson and Nurse Maya. The contrast was stark. While Maya exuded kindness and dedication, Dr. Thompson's arrogance overshadowed his talent. Leonard had tried to stay out of the way during his recovery, but he couldn't help but notice how the staff often tiptoed around the surgeon. He found himself feeling a deep sense of empathy for Maya, especially after witnessing the humiliation she had endured. It gnawed at him, and he knew he had to do something. He wanted to champion the hard-working individuals who kept the hospital running smoothly, who often went unnoticed. "Ms. Johnson," Leonard called out weakly, hoping to catch the attention of the nurse who had been so kind to him during his stay. Maya, who had just finished her volunteer session, entered the room, her expression brightening when she saw him. "Mr. Smith," she exclaimed, her voice warm and genuine. "How are you feeling today?" "Better, thanks to you and the amazing staff here," he replied, a smile creeping onto his face. "I've been watching you all work so hard, and it's truly impressive." Maya felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "Thank you. It's just what we do. We care for our patients." Leonard nodded, his eyes serious. "It's not just about care. It's about respect and recognition. I've seen how Dr. Thompson treats you and others. It's unacceptable." Maya was taken aback by his candor. "I appreciate your concern, but it's part of the job. We deal with personalities of all kinds." "Dealing with it doesn't mean accepting it," Leonard replied firmly. "You deserve better. All of you do." Maya's heart raced as she realized the weight of his words. She had often dismissed her own feelings, believing that her worth hinged on her work, but Leonard's perspective resonated with her. "It's hard to speak up, especially when you're afraid of the consequences." Leonard leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You have a voice, and it matters. Sometimes it takes one person to stand up, and others will follow. You could be that person." The conversation lingered in Maya's mind long after she left Leonard's room. She returned home, reflecting on the encouragement he had given her. It was a sentiment she had heard before, but it felt different coming from him. He was a patient, yet he saw her, truly saw her, and it ignited something within her that had been dimmed by Dr. Thompson's arrogance. Days passed, and with each shift at the hospital, Maya felt a growing sense of empowerment. She began to speak up more during team meetings, offering her insights and advocating for her patients. The nurses around her noticed the change, and slowly, they began to rally behind her. Then came the day that would test everything she had learned. An emergency arose in the hospital. A patient had collapsed in the hallway, and chaos ensued. Nurses rushed to the scene, and Maya's heart raced as she moved instinctively towards the crowd. "Get the crash cart!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the panic. She took charge, her training kicking in as she assessed the situation. The patient, a middle-aged man, was unresponsive, and Maya quickly began administering CPR, her hands working with precision. Dr. Thompson arrived shortly after, his presence commanding as he barked orders at the staff. But Maya was in her element. She had trained for moments like this, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. "Call for the anesthesiologist," she yelled, directing the chaos with confidence. As she continued her efforts, she felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the same feeling that had driven her to become a nurse in the first place. Minutes felt like hours, but finally, the crash cart arrived and Dr. Thompson took over. He delivered orders, but Maya remained focused on the patient, her instincts guiding her. After what felt like an eternity, the man's heart monitor beeped steadily, and he began to regain consciousness. "Good job, everyone," Dr. Thompson exclaimed, a self-satisfied grin on his face. But as he turned to the staff, Maya felt a surge of frustration. "Wait," she said, stepping forward. "It was a team effort, and we need to acknowledge everyone's role in this." Dr. Thompson's expression hardened, but the other nurses nodded in agreement. Maya's heart raced as she realized she had spoken up, her voice unwavering. "I couldn't have done this without the support of the team," she reiterated, looking around. "We all played a part in saving this man's life." There was a moment of silence, and then several nurses stepped forward, echoing Maya's sentiments. "Yes, we worked together," one of them said. As the gravity of the situation settled, Dr. Thompson's facade began to crack. "Of course, it was a team effort," he said, but there was an edge to his voice that suggested he didn't fully believe it. Maya felt a surge of triumph wash over her. She had stood tall in the face of adversity, and for the first time, she could feel the respect of her colleagues surrounding her like a protective shield. As they wheeled the patient away for further care, Maya glanced at Leonard's room, her heart pounding with gratitude for the encouragement he had given her. In the days that followed, the incident became the talk of the hospital. Maya's confidence grew as she continued to advocate for her colleagues and patients. She found herself stepping into a leadership role, noticing the shift in how others viewed her. Leonard, still recovering, often asked for updates on Maya's progress. He could sense the change in her demeanor, the fire in her spirit that was slowly burning brighter. "You're making waves, Maya," he said one afternoon when she visited him. "Just trying to do my job," she replied, but a smile broke across her face at his praise. "More than that," he insisted. "You're changing the narrative. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As Maya continued to grow and evolve in her role, she knew the journey ahead was still fraught with challenges. But she also understood that she had the strength to face them head-on. With newfound determination, she looked forward to the day when she could take a stand, not just for herself, but for all the nurses and staff who had been marginalized and silenced. In that moment of clarity, Maya felt empowered, ready to embrace her worth and reclaim her voice. She would no longer let the shadows of another's arrogance dim her light, for she was a force to be reckoned with. Maya Johnson sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of the day pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. The sterile white walls of her small apartment felt suffocating, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of the community she often immersed herself in. She stared blankly at her reflection in the mirror, her dark curls framing a face that once radiated confidence and warmth, but now looked tired and defeated. The humiliation she had faced at the hands of Dr. Andrew Thompson replayed in her mind like a broken record, each note a reminder of her vulnerability. "Maybe I should just quit," she whispered to herself, a thought so foreign and frightening that it sent a shiver down her spine. The nursing profession had been her calling, her passion. It was where she found purpose, where she felt she could make a difference. But after the incident with Dr. Thompson, her confidence had been shaken to its core. Just then, her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Tara, her closest friend and confidant. "Hey Maya, let's grab some coffee tomorrow? I think you need to talk. Red heart, asterisk." Maya's heart warmed at the thought of Tara's unwavering support. She knew her friend would listen, but deep down, She felt a sense of shame for needing that support. Why couldn't she just shake off Dr. Thompson's words and move forward? The next day, they met in the hospital's break room, a small oasis of warmth amid the cold sterility of the medical environment. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of antiseptic. Maya sat across from Tara, who was already nursing a steaming cup. "Maya, you've been really quiet lately," Tara said, her brow creased with concern. "What's going on? You can talk to me." Taking a deep breath, Maya felt the tears prick at her eyes. "It's just, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Tara." Dr. Thompson's words cut deep. "Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm not cut out for this." Tara shook her head vehemently. "No, Maya. You are an incredible nurse. You care so much for your patients. Just because he's a jerk doesn't mean you're not good at what you do. You've saved lives, for heaven's sake." Maya looked down, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "But the way he belittled me in front of a patient, I felt so small. It's hard to shake that off." "You can't let him define you," Tara insisted, her voice rising slightly. "You have to stand up for yourself. You deserve respect. You've earned it." Maya nodded slowly, her heart heavy yet a glimmer of resolve igniting within her. "You're right. I'll think about it." Meanwhile, in the hospital's private room, Leonard Smith lay in bed, the beeping of monitors the only sound breaking the silence. He had been recovering from surgery and had taken the opportunity to observe the hospital dynamics from a distance. With each passing day, he had gained more respect for the nursing staff, especially for Maya. He had witnessed her gentle demeanor with patients, her tireless efforts, and her ability to remain composed even in the face of chaos. Leonard recalled the incident he had witnessed firsthand, the way Dr. Thompson had belittled Maya, his arrogance on full display. It had left a bitter taste in his mouth. As the CEO of a healthcare organization, he understood the importance of a supportive work environment. He had always believed that respect and kindness were paramount in fostering a healthy workplace culture. Sitting up slightly, he decided it was time to take action. He needed to advocate for the staff who worked so hard, yet often went unrecognized. Leonard grabbed his phone and sent out an email to the senior management team, proposing a meeting to discuss workplace culture and the treatment of staff. As he typed, he felt a sense of purpose wash over him. He wanted to ensure that no one else would have to endure what Maya had faced. Back in the break room, Maya's conversation with Tara had shifted her perspective. She felt renewed determination, yet uncertainty still lingered. "What if I speak up and it doesn't change anything?" she asked Tara. "Then at least you'll know you tried. You can't let fear silence you." Tara replied, her eyes fierce with conviction. "We need to create a culture where we're all treated with respect. You're not alone in this." Maya took a deep breath, the weight of her friend's words settling in her heart. Perhaps it was time to stop doubting her worth. Perhaps it was time to confront the issue head-on. As the day progressed, whispers filled the hospital corridors about an upcoming meeting. Staff members exchanged glances, some filled with intrigue, others with apprehension. Leonard had sent out the invitation, and the anticipation was palpable. Dr. Thompson, however, was oblivious to the buzz surrounding him. He strode through the hospital, exuding an air of superiority, but a flicker of unease began to creep in. He had an inkling that something was brewing, and he did not like the feeling one bit. "Hey, did you hear about the meeting?" one of the nurses asked him, trying to gauge his reaction. He smirked, feigning disinterest. "What meeting?" "The one about workplace culture. Apparently, it's going to address some serious concerns," the nurse replied, a hint of apprehension in her voice. Dr. Thompson waved his hand dismissively. "Culture? Please. It's just a bunch of disgruntled employees looking for someone to blame. They should focus on their work instead of whining." Inside, however, he felt a twinge of worry. He had spent years building his reputation, and he knew that any challenge to his authority could unravel everything. Determined to maintain his control, he made a mental note to prepare for whatever this meeting entailed. Later that evening, as Maya sat in her apartment, she received a notification on her phone, a calendar invitation for Leonard's meeting. A surge of adrenaline shot through her as she read the details. Realizing this was her chance to speak. "Tara, I got the invite. Maya exclaimed, her voice a mixture of excitement and dread. It's happening tomorrow. Good. This is your moment. Remember, you're not alone, Tara encouraged, squeezing Maya's hand. You've got this. Maya nodded, but as she lay in bed that night, her mind raced with questions. What would she say? Would anyone listen? The fear of standing up to Dr. Thompson loomed large, yet the thought of remaining silent felt even more suffocating. The following day, the atmosphere in the hospital was charged with anticipation. Staff members gathered in the conference room, murmurs of curiosity and concern filling the air. Maya could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she took her seat, flanked by Tara and a few other nurses who shared her sentiments. Leonard entered the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. He greeted everyone with a warm smile that contrasted sharply with the tension in the air. Thank you all for coming. I know that many of you have concerns about the work environment, and I want to create a space where those concerns can be addressed openly and respectfully. Maya felt a swell of hope. Leonard's sincerity was palpable, and it gave her the courage she needed. As the meeting progressed, staff members voiced their frustrations and experiences, each story echoing Maya's own. Then, as the conversation turned to Dr. Thompson and his treatment of staff, Maya felt her heart race. This was it. With a deep breath, she raised her hand, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. I'd like to share my experience, she began, feeling the weight of everyone's gaze on her. I believe that respect is fundamental in our workplace, and yet I've felt belittled and disrespected by Dr. Thompson. Gasps echoed around the room, and Maya quickly continued, I know I'm not the only one who has experienced this. We need to stand together for a better environment, where everyone is treated with dignity. As she spoke, she noticed Leonard nodding in encouragement, his eyes locked on her with unwavering support. The energy in the room shifted as her words resonated with her colleagues, sparking a sense of solidarity. In that moment, Maya felt a profound sense of empowerment. She was no longer just a victim. She was a voice for change. And as she glanced around the room, she saw nods of agreement and expressions of understanding. But little did they know, Dr. Thompson was lurking nearby, his expression darkening as he caught wind of their conversation. His mind raced with thoughts of how to quash this uprising, unaware that Leonard had a plan that would shake his very foundation. As the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a sterile glow on the conference room, Nurse Maya Johnson took a deep breath, her heart racing in her chest. It was the day of the much-anticipated meeting, a gathering that could change the dynamics of the hospital forever. Nurses, aides, and even some doctors had been invited to discuss their workplace culture, a topic that had become increasingly pertinent in light of Dr. Andrew Thompson's recent behavior. Maya sat at the long table, her palms clammy against the polished surface. She glanced around the room, noting the nervous expressions on her colleagues' faces. They were all aware of the tension surrounding Dr. Thompson, but few had dared to voice their concerns. Today, Maya resolved that would change. Thank you all for coming, Leonard Smith began, his voice steady yet warm. He had taken it upon himself to organize the meeting after witnessing the toxic dynamics that plagued the hospital staff. From his hospital bed, he had seen the courage that Maya displayed daily, and he felt compelled to support her. I know these discussions can be uncomfortable, but it's essential that we address the issues that affect our work environment, Leonard continued, his eyes scanning the audience. Today, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your experiences. Maya's heart pounded as she prepared to speak. She had rehearsed her words countless times, but now they felt like lead in her throat. Still, she knew she had to be brave. As she raised her hand, the room fell silent, all eyes on her. I'd like to share something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But as she continued, it grew stronger. I've been a nurse here for 5 years, and I've always loved my job. I care deeply for my patients, and I work hard every day to provide them with the best care possible. However, my experience has been marred by the treatment I've received from Dr. Thompson. She paused, gauging the reactions around her. Some nodded in understanding, while others looked uncomfortable. Maya took a deep breath and pressed on. His constant belittling remarks have not only made my job harder, but have also made me question my abilities as a nurse. It's demoralizing to have your skills undermined, especially in front of patients. It creates a hostile work environment, and I know I'm not the only one who feels this way." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Maya could see the support in her colleagues' eyes, and it emboldened her. We deserve to work in an environment that fosters respect and collaboration, not fear and humiliation. As she spoke, Maya noticed Dr. Thompson's shadow lurking at the back of the room. He had arrived late, his presence looming like a storm cloud. She could feel his piercing gaze on her, but she refused to let it intimidate her. "I believe we need to hold each other accountable," she concluded, her voice ringing with conviction. "We cannot allow toxic behavior to persist. It's time for us to stand together and demand a change." The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the walls. Maya felt a rush of relief and exhilaration. But before she could fully embrace the moment, Leonard stepped forward. "Thank you, Maya," he said, his tone unwavering. "Your courage to speak out is commendable, and I assure you, you are not alone in this. I want to emphasize that I am not just the CEO of this healthcare organization. I am also a patient. I understand the importance of a supportive environment for both staff and patients alike." Leonard paused, letting his words sink in. "My experience here has shown me the dedication and hard work that each of you brings to the table. However, it has also highlighted the need for systemic change. We must prioritize respect and dignity in our workplace. That starts now." As he spoke, Maya felt a swell of gratitude. It was refreshing to hear someone in a position of power advocating for her and her colleagues. Leonard's sincerity was evident, and she could see the impact his words had on the room. "Dr. Thompson," Leonard continued, turning his gaze toward the surgeon, who stood rigid at the back, "I think it's important for you to understand the weight of your actions. Leadership is not just about surgical skill. It's about fostering an environment where everyone feels valued. We need to address the behavior that has been reported." Dr. Thompson's face darkened, his jaw clenched as he stepped forward, attempting to regain control of the narrative. "I think we need to be careful about making accusations without evidence," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Nursing is a challenging field, and not everyone is cut out for it. Perhaps Maya is simply struggling with her own insecurities." A collective gasp echoed through the room, and Maya felt her stomach churn. She could see the hurt in her colleagues' eyes, and a few looked ready to defend her. "Dr. Thompson, this isn't about individual shortcomings," Leonard replied firmly. "This is about a culture that allows toxic behavior to flourish. It's about accountability. Your actions have consequences, and it's time to acknowledge that." Maya's heart raced as the tension in the room escalated. This was the moment she had hoped for, a confrontation that could lead to real change. "Leonard, you don't understand," Dr. Thompson persisted, his arrogance flaring. "I'm one of the best surgeons in this city. My results speak for themselves. You can't let one disgruntled nurse sway your opinion of my practice." "Your practice is not in question here, Dr. Thompson," Leonard shot back, his voice unwavering. "What's in question is your treatment of staff. You may be skilled, but that does not give you the right to belittle those who work beside you. Respect goes both ways." The room buzzed with energy, and Maya felt a surge of empowerment flowing through her. This was a pivotal moment for them all, a chance to confront the status quo and demand respect. "I've seen how you treat your staff, and it's unacceptable," Maya interjected, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "We're not here to undermine your abilities, but to stand up for ourselves and each other. We need to create an environment where everyone can thrive." Dr. Thompson, cornered and flustered, attempted to regain his composure. "This is ridiculous. You're all overreacting. I've trained many of you personally. I have the right to expect a certain standard of care and professionalism." "Expecting professionalism is one thing," Leonard countered, "but belittling your colleagues is another. We are all here for the same reason, to provide the best care for our patients. That requires teamwork and mutual respect." Maya's heart swelled as she felt the support of her colleagues behind her. They were fighting together, and it felt powerful. "Dr. Thompson, this meeting is about fostering a better workplace culture," she said, her voice unwavering. "You have a choice here. You can either continue to perpetuate this toxic environment, or you can choose to change. The choice is yours. Dr. Thompson's face flushed with anger, but deep down, Maya could see the cracks forming in his facade. For too long, he had hidden behind his reputation, but now the truth was out for all to see. "I won't stand here and be attacked," he said, his voice rising. "This is outrageous. I demand respect." "Respect is earned, Dr. Thompson," Leonard replied, his tone steady. "And right now, you're not earning it. If you want to continue working here, it's time to reflect on your behavior and how it affects those around you." The tension in the room was palpable, and Maya felt a sense of triumph wash over her. They had stood up for themselves, and for the first time, they had the support of someone in power. As the meeting continued, the atmosphere shifted. Colleagues began to share their own experiences, recounting moments of humiliation and disrespect. The floodgates had opened, and it became clear that Maya was not alone in her struggles. Dr. Thompson, once the embodiment of arrogance, now stood isolated as the voices of the collective staff rose around him. They were no longer intimidated. They were empowered. In that moment, Maya realized that this wasn't just about her. It was about all of them. They were fighting for a better workplace, for respect, and for the dignity that every healthcare worker deserved. As the meeting drew to a close, Maya felt a sense of hope. Change was coming, and she was proud to have played a part in it. Together, they would stand strong against adversity, united in their pursuit of a better future for themselves and their patients. Leonard's final words resonated with her, a promise that they would work together to create a culture of respect and accountability. The journey ahead would be challenging, but Maya felt ready to face it head-on, backed by the unwavering support of her colleagues. The seeds of change had been planted, and she was determined to nurture them until they blossomed into something beautiful. The fallout from the meeting reverberated through the hospital like an electric shock. Maya Johnson, still reeling from the surge of courage she had mustered to stand up against Dr. Andrew Thompson, found herself surrounded by her colleagues in the nurses' station, their voices a chorus of support and validation. The air was thick with a sense of camaraderie, a shared understanding that they had crossed a threshold together, one that would reshape their professional landscape. "Maya, you were incredible in there," Tara exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with admiration. She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around Maya in a warm embrace. "I can't believe you did it. You stood up to him like a boss." Maya chuckled softly, the tension of the past few days melting away for a moment. "I didn't feel like a boss, Tara. I felt like I was about to faint." She shook her head, still processing the surreal experience of speaking out in front of the staff, especially with Leonard revealing himself as the CEO. "Trust me, you were a force of nature," another nurse added, a hint of awe in her voice. "We've all seen how he treats you. It was about time someone said something." As the nurses continued to rally around Maya, the atmosphere was punctuated by a sense of justice, a collective acknowledgement that the toxic environment fostered by Dr. Thompson could no longer be tolerated. The once dominant surgeon had become the subject of whispered conversations, his reputation hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, Dr. Thompson sat in his office, the walls feeling more like a prison than a sanctuary. The news of the meeting had spread like wildfire, and he could sense the shift in the hospital's mood. His arrogance, once a shield that protected him from accountability, was now a burden he could no longer bear comfortably. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath, frustration bubbling to the surface. "This is ridiculous. They can't just turn on me like this." He picked up his phone, scrolling through the contacts, searching for anyone who could help him salvage his reputation. But the truth was, the more he thought about it, the more isolated he felt. The support he had once commanded was slipping through his fingers like sand. In the following days, the tension in the hospital escalated. Leonard Smith, now fully aware of the impact of his presence at the meeting, took it upon himself to investigate the culture of the organization. He spent hours speaking with staff, listening to their experiences, and documenting their concerns. Each conversation revealed a pattern of behavior from Dr. Thompson that was both alarming and disheartening. "Leonard, are you sure about this?" Tara asked one afternoon as they sat in the hospital cafeteria, the clatter of trays and murmurs of colleagues surrounding them. You really think you can change things? Leonard leaned forward, determination etched across his face. I have to try. Maya's courage opened my eyes to what's been happening here. It's not just her story, it's the stories of so many others. If I can help create a better environment for them, then it's worth it. Tara nodded slowly, her expression shifting from concern to admiration. You're right. It's just, I've seen good nurses leave because of him. It's not just about Maya. It's about all of us. As the days passed, the hospital administration announced that Dr. Thompson would be placed on leave pending an investigation into his conduct. The news rippled through the hospital, igniting a sense of hope among the staff. Maya felt a mix of emotions. Relief that Dr. Thompson would no longer be in a position to undermine her, but also a gnawing anxiety about what would come next. Hey Maya, a voice called out, breaking her from her thoughts. It was Leonard, approaching her with a purpose. Do you have a moment? Of course, Leonard, she replied, her heart racing slightly. She had grown to respect him immensely over the past few weeks, and the thought of what he might say filled her with anticipation. I wanted to talk to you about the investigation, he began, glancing around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. I think it's crucial that you share your experiences. Your voice carries weight, and it could really help the committee understand the extent of his behavior. Maya hesitated, her mind racing back to the humiliation she had felt at Dr. Thompson's hands. Do you really think it'll make a difference? I mean, he's a surgeon, and I'm just a nurse. Will they believe me? Leonard stepped closer, his eyes firm but kind. Maya, you are not just a nurse. You are an incredibly skilled and compassionate caregiver who deserves to be heard. If we want to change the culture here, we need to shine a light on the truth. Your truth. Maya nodded slowly, feeling a swell of determination rise within her. You're right. I can't let fear hold me back anymore. I'll do it. Great. Leonard grinned, the warmth of his encouragement washing over her. I'll be there to support you every step of the way. As the investigation unfolded, Maya found herself in a process that was both daunting and cathartic. She met with the committee, recounting her experiences with Dr. Thompson, her voice steady and unwavering. The more she spoke, the more she felt the weight of her story lift, transforming her pain into power. Days turned into weeks, and Dr. Thompson remained on leave, the shadow of his past behavior casting a long pall over the hospital. Colleagues whispered about his potential return, while others expressed their hope for a fresh start without his presence. In the midst of this turmoil, Leonard found himself increasingly involved in hospital reform initiatives. He organized training sessions that emphasized respect, inclusivity, and the importance of valuing every member of the staff. He invited Maya to co-lead some of these sessions, recognizing her unique perspective and the strength she had shown throughout the investigation. Are you ready for this? He asked her one morning as they prepared for their first training session together. The room was filled with anxious nurses and doctors, all eager to learn and grow. I think so, Maya replied, her heart racing. But what if they still don't take me seriously? Leonard placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. They will. You've already proven that you have the courage to stand up and speak out. Just share your experiences and let your passion guide you. As the session began, Maya felt a surge of confidence. She spoke about the importance of respect in the workplace, sharing her journey and the challenges she had faced. The room was silent, every eye fixed on her, and she could feel the shift in energy as her colleagues began to understand the depth of her experiences. Thank you for sharing that, Maya. A doctor finally spoke up, his voice filled with sincerity. It's important for us to recognize the impact our words and actions can have on each other. We need to do better. Maya smiled, feeling a sense of validation wash over her. We can all do better. It starts with us creating a culture where everyone feels valued and respected. The session ended with applause, and Maya felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She had found her voice, and it was powerful. As the investigation concluded, the hospital administration announced the findings, and the consequences for Dr. Thompson were severe. He would not return to his position, and his behavior would be documented in a way that would prevent him from practicing in similar environments. It was a moment of triumph for Maya and her colleagues, a testament to their resilience and the change they had fought for. In the aftermath, as Dr. Thompson's office was cleared out and his name faded from the hospital's walls, Maya found herself reflecting on her journey. She had faced humiliation, doubt, and fear, but through it all, she had emerged stronger than ever. One afternoon, she walked into the break room to find Tara waiting for her. "Guess what?" Tara exclaimed, her face beaming with excitement. "They just announced your promotion. You're going to be our new nursing supervisor." "What?" Maya gasped, her heart racing with disbelief and joy. "Are you serious?" "I am. You deserve it more than anyone. You've shown us what true leadership looks like," Tara said, her eyes shining with pride. Maya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes as she took in the significance of the moment. She had gone from feeling belittled and powerless to standing in a position of influence and respect. "Thank you, Tara. I couldn't have done it without you and everyone else who supported me. And now you're going to inspire even more people," Tara added, embracing her tightly. "You're going to be a phenomenal supervisor." As Maya stood there, enveloped in the warmth of her friend's support, she realized that her journey was not just about overcoming adversity. It was about forging a new path for herself and others. She had learned the importance of self-worth, the strength that comes from standing up for what is right, and the profound impact of community and support. With her head held high and her heart filled with purpose, Maya was ready to embrace her new role, to lead with compassion and integrity, and to ensure that every voice in the hospital was heard and valued. The challenges ahead might still be daunting, but she was no longer alone. She had found her place, one of empowerment, respect, and resilience, and she was determined to make a difference.